Welcome into Carps Corner, Bobby Carpenter's show here. My goodness, got Maryland up this weekend, coming up Saturday, 3:30 kick. Going to be taking place in the state of Maryland. So one last road test before the final home game against Michigan. And for me, like Monday hit, I felt like it was the start of Michigan week. You've got Thanksgiving coming up. A lot of people do some stuff before the weekend before, because as soon as you hit out of Maryland, I mean, that week, boom, you're into Thanksgiving, you're into Michigan week, and there's so much going on and so much ultimately happening. So, I mean, this is like the last gasp here. There's so many things that are already spinning through, but we'll break down the game next show and everything you need to watch and what we need to find out here. Got some Ryan Day sound that we obviously want to hit. Some of the stuff from obviously the last game against Indiana, some of the stuff forward looking to what's going on potentially with Maryland, some of the injury updates, some stuff with Kam Babb, which, is just utterly amazing. I mean, he's a remarkable human that we'll get into, and then answer all your questions as always in the midweek mailbag, which a lot I'm guessing are going to probably be about running back depth, injuries, different things here. So some of the stuff from Ryan Day, some of the stuff from, and a line from Jim Knowles on something I found out about Tommy Eichenberg that probably not a lot of people noticed except for maybe a little Brace. So we'll get into this right away. And the question comes up with Ryan all the time, especially this week, looking past Maryland, looking at Michigan, what does that potentially look like?
I think it's something that comes up every week, comes up every year, this time of year. So what we try to do is like you said, the competitive excellence focus is something that we talked about early on, so that when we got to a moment like this, you don't just walk in a Tuesday meeting and say, guys, okay, we got to really focus on this week. Well, we've been saying this all along. March Madness starts the first week of the season around here. And so you just have to embrace that and understand what it means to bring it every single week. Now we're working, the game at the end of the year, every day out of the year. So that's not something that is out of the ordinary to know that that's always in the back of our minds, but that's like that every week. So our focus right now is on Maryland, going down there at 3:30, playing really good football, and then going from there.
Couple things there to take away from that. Number one, I loved the competitive excellence, competitive stamina that Ryan's been hammering. Consistent messaging is always important as a leader. Ryan's very big on that. So it's the same stuff he's been emphasizing. You're talking about you don't have any time to look past people. I mean, essentially, college football is March Madness. You lose, maybe you can still advance, but you lose the wrong game and it might be over for you. So always very important there. And then this is the little nugget he slid in. Prepare for Michigan, a portion of every day. It may not be the focus that day because you obviously have to win every game or it doesn't matter. But we always have them in the back of our mind. We're always putting a little bit of time and effort in. We're always kind of evaluating what they're doing. And that's why I think this toughness, this competitive stamina, all those things, they're leaning in big on that. And that's a huge piece of it. And then the question was brought up to him, potentially playing Michigan twice in the season. Should one of them be able to get in as a loser into the college football playoff?
I remember initially thinking that very thing, but until you just said that, I hadn't given it much thought recently. But it certainly does make you think for a second. I can't tell you I'm in a place to be focusing on anything other than trying to beat Maryland and going after those guys. But that'll be very unique for sure. I guess more like, an NFL, situation where you may have to play a team multiple times, and that would, kind of affect maybe your game planning. But we'll worry about that when we get down the road.
Yeah, it's funny. Ryan kind of makes a joke of it. Heck, he's got a lot bigger things to worry about than playing Michigan twice. You figure that out. He coached in the NFL. He understands in divisions you play teams twice, home and away. But that's something that probably no one's really ever thought of before, and that could be an issue, something that could come up. But you know what? That's a great problem to have that means you're in the CFP and you're worrying about it down the line. The big question here for everybody, the running back injuries, what he thinks about everyone. That's what he was saying post game.
I don't think that hopefully these are going to be, some things that we can overcome here in a short period of time. Great to see our depth show up. We'll have to see, but, it didn't look like, based on what we saw here in the locker room, that it was going to be something that was going to be really long-term. So we'll see how he feels overnight, and then, hoping to get Trey back for next week.
Here's the thing. Hopefully Trey's back for this game. We'll get into this a lot more in the mailbag, because I know everybody's going to want to hear about it. Hopefully Trey will be back for this week, and maybe an emergency situation. I'm sure he's getting close to 100%. You don't necessarily want to play him and expose him to anything. Maybe get him a couple reps, but not overwork him if you don't need him. Mayan, let him rest. Hopefully you'll be able to get him back from Michigan. I feel like that'll be the case. And even if he can only give you 15 to 20 snaps, those will be impactful. So it's to lean into Dallin Hayden in this. Hopefully you have Chip train him ready to go and get him going in a big way, because I think Chip could be something pretty special. And we've already seen what Dallin can do. You know, he's got the pedigree with his dad. Very, very talented player there, just young. And so it's nice to have some depth, because they've needed all that running back depth this year. A little bit of a longer cut from Ryan now, talking about Kam Babb and what he ultimately has meant to this program, and what he's gone through, and how emotional experience it was for everyone on Saturday.
You know, this is somebody who's overcome 4 ACL surgeries. You know, that's 9 months recovery times 4. So that's a long time to be in recovery, not being able to do something that you love. And when it happened the last time, you know, there's just a lot of questions on whether he wanted to do it. And he never batted an eye. He said, this is what I want to do. He put his faith in God and felt like this was his journey. What happened today in the stadium was magical. And that's what college football means to a lot of people. Not to everybody, but to a lot of people. And that's one of the reasons why college football is special. It's one of the reasons why you coach, is to see something like that happen. And hopefully there's somebody out there that's going through tough times that can see that as a motivation to overcome, because it's one thing to see that moment right there, but it's all the morning workouts he had with Adam Stewart. It's all the, you know, mornings waking up on crutches. It's, you know, the disappointment, because that's not what you picture when you graduate high school and you sign with Ohio State is something like this. But there was something special that went on the field there, and you could see it with our team. And I'm just really happy for him, but just really selfishly proud to be part of a moment like that, to see someone overcome such great obstacles in life. I just can't say enough about it, because, you know, there'll be great wins and there'll be great accomplishments here at Ohio State, but that what he's overcome is one of the great accomplishments, and it's not something that people will see, but at least they were able to be a part of that right there. And, you know, those who were in the stadium were able to be a part of it, because that's as special as I've been around.
You hear Ryan talk about it. You know, the 4 ACL tears, 9 months each time. I mean, that's 36 months. That's 3 years, 3 solid years of trying to repair and rehab those ACLs. And then how magical and spiritual it almost was, and how, you know, spiritual Kam has become through this whole process, and you know, his faith guiding him through all of that. And Kam hasn't shied away from it. They did a great video that OSU put out on social media, and it really talked about it, and, you know, how he's been able to share his faith with other members of the team. And that's something I think is a big part of this Ohio State team. And, you know, Kam Babb, there's a reason why he's been the captain for 2 years and going through all these things, the impact he has on his teammates around him. And there's an emotional element that when he's out there, I think that you feel, and, you know, this may be like some sort of rallying point, or, you know, some sort of point of influx where this could potentially change, an inflection point, if you will, where this could potentially, you know, add a little juice to the season. This is what Kam had to say about his own situation.
I would say, I mean, I love football, but mostly faith. Mostly, again, knowing that when I, you know, truly surrender my life to Jesus, and he showed me his love and who he is, I just wanted to share that with the world. And we have such a big platform here at Ohio State. I just thought, you know, if it doesn't work out, then Jesus is still good. He's still King. He's still Lord. You know, he's still my Savior. It doesn't really matter. But if it works out in a way that I think it can, then, like I said, there's so many people that I can turn to him, you know, and I think there's a lot of sadness and stuff going on in the world, and I just wanted to be able to tell people about what Jesus has done in my life, and just even for my teammates, just I know they go through things just like me, so if I could just help them out as well, that was it too.
It's big right there. You know, the faith, the football, the platform, there's ability to share that. You know, you've heard Mecca Igbuka talk about it. Marvin Harrison Jr. is talking about it. Those guys understand what he means to them and what he's ultimately able to do. And whether football works out or not, I mean, Kam's got his head in a really great place, and he was blessed with unbelievable ability. And he's had that ability in his hand and out of his hand a lot over the last 4.5 years. And it's heartwarming to see that happen and to hear him speak about it with such conviction. Warms my heart, makes me feel good and proud to be an Ohio State Buckeye, and proud to have that guy put on the same jersey that so many other great players have worn before him and that'll wear after, because he is a testament to what it means to be an Ohio State Buckeye. And lastly here, we're going to dive in. Tommy Eichenberg's got like a little hand wrist deal. People are kind of acknowledging it now, realizing this is kind of an issue for him, and had to get the thing, getting it cleaned up, what that ultimately looks like. But Jim Knowles talked about, their conversations he's had with tackling and, what Tommy's all about.
It's part of the game, but the toughest guys don't let it limit them, and he's one of them, so you try not to talk about it, you try not to acknowledge it, because what's the plan, right? I mean, it's just a couple things you can do with tackling that I have talked to him about, going lower, roll tackling, using more of a single leg with the with the torque and sliding your arm through the leg. I mean, there's a couple things you can talk about, but for the most part, you just play through it. And
AJ and I used to always joke around, Tommy tough guy, when someone's trying to act tougher, than maybe what they were. But, Jim Knowles kind of acknowledges it. Tommy Eichenberg is a tough dude. When you have an injury, like, you don't want to acknowledge it. You don't use it as a crutch. If you can't play and the guy behind you's better, you play them. But Tommy's a tough guy. He's not going to let it bother him. He doesn't bring it up. They've talked about, the challenge of it. They talked about, the tackling and everything, and how you can potentially help it. But, Tommy's the leader of that defense, and those guys love him out there. He plays his butt off. And so you want to see that. You want to see him play as well as possible. And one last thing here before we get ultimately to the mailbag, and I want to throw this up here real quick. Xavier Johnson, talking about him, could have probably gone a lot of places and played a lot of football, but he is here as a Buckeye making an impact on a team that wants to go chase some unbelievable goals. And Xavier Johnson could have transferred out and went and played somewhere, probably went to a lot of MAC schools and, went and had 90 catches and had 1,200 yards, but he wanted to stay a Buckeye. Dude's worked his butt off. He's a grinder. He's tough. He's a culture guy for the team, and he's making an impact. He's made big plays for this team, and I think he's going to continue. His story's not fully written yet, and I'm excited to what his story is going to ultimately look like once this season is complete. All right, now to the mailbag. First question: would having Jackson Smith and Jigba available for the game be a distraction with chemistry, or do you and because of that, do you wait to the Big Ten championship game? If Jax can play, you put him out there. Jackson wants to play. If he's ready to go, you put him out there. He's a great dude. You hear this stuff about Kam Babb and all these different things. Like, they have especially in the receiver room, it is a room of great humans. I don't think it'll impact chemistry at all. As long as him and CJ are on the same page, they'll be good. How does Knowles line up his D against the team up north? Does he play Simon more of a three-backer set all game, or does he stick with the three safeties? When you played against a running QB, what was fixed message on how to stop that? Number one, when you have a running quarterback, it's everybody's job to stop him. Defensive line are aware of it, linebacker, safeties. If you're around there, you always have to be prepared. He can pull that thing down. You work on your scramble drill, and you have to have relentless pursuit to the ball. Make sure you keep containing your rushes and understand the guy's more apt to pull it down than throw it. That's number one. The second part of that, Jim Knowles, they've got the three linebackers set. Cody Simon's done a really great job this year. He's great, not a champion, as Ryan's talked about. So they have three good options. And I think there'll be a lot of times where he's going to be in the game. Jim will mix it up. I'm confident he'll pick the right formula of how to play each guy and how much and all these things. Jim is really stinking good at his job. And so I trust that they'll integrate that in the proper manner of what they ultimately need. You got to think also, Blake Corum, Donovan Jackson, or Donovan they're both really talented running backs. They're good in the pass game. Their tight ends are good in the pass game. So how do you integrate the linebackers of being able to cover those guys and get them out? Those are all interesting things that they're going to have to take into account. Do you think the Big Ten will add more teams after USC and UCLA join the conference? Which teams should they add? I think they ultimately will. They don't want them to just be an outpost. I think Washington and Oregon make a lot of sense. I think Stanford makes a lot of sense. So depending how this thing shakes out in the next, couple of years, I could see them adding, those guys. Maybe it's just the two for the first year, but I do think they'll ultimately make a move, and there will be schools that will want to move. Rankings can be fun to talk about. They're pointless, though, especially preseason. Why can't they do away with all the rankings until the first playoff poll? Here's the reason why. Because when you want to pitch games, it needs to be 1 versus 5 and 2 versus 8 and 12 versus 9 and all these different rankings. And that's how you pitch those preseason games. And so, yeah, I work in the sports media business. I think they're pointless too. But people want to have something to talk about. You want to have water cooler discussion, all of that stuff. That's all well and good. But yeah, they are pointless early on because, as you see, teams ebb and flow. Oregon got smoked by Georgia, then they battle back, and they lose again. Notre Dame lost a couple, wins some big ones, lose again, wins some more big ones, and now they're back to where they need to be. Like it just going to ebb and flow throughout the season. AJ asked me if I could get him a quote for a commercial-sized generator for his house. Yeah, I can get that for him. AJ's my dude. Already texted him. We're going to be working on that. So if you need a generator, I didn't even realize I have this on. You know, we do plumbing, HVAC, and electrical as well. So yeah, all home servicing stuff. We can take care of it. And we'll be getting it done for him there. Updates on my end, Trey and JSN. I think Trey's going to be fine. I think he'll be 100% and ready to go when we need him. Jackson, I'm not sure. I believe that he'll be ready to go for the game, but we'll find out. Maybe even this week. Who knows? But I think we'd be leaning more towards Michigan. Or I mean, rather for JSN. And then Mayan, I think this is a deal where, you know what? He's going to have to grind some rehab out. I think he'll be ready to go for Michigan. I don't think he'll be ready for this week, but we'll see. He's just probably more of a 2-week, potentially longer deal, but Mayan's a tough dude, and I know he's grinding on his rehab. Michigan's overall pass rush numbers are surprisingly similar to last year's, despite not having Hutchinson and Ojabo. Do you see a threat there with Morris specifically, or do you think the OSU line holds up better than last year? I think OSU can run the ball better than they can last year. So I think that plays into it. Being at home is going to help the offensive line. And then I think the offensive line is better than what they were last year. And CJ's a more experienced quarterback, and they're more prepared for the intensity and everything that Michigan's going to bring. Will JSN be able to return this season? I think he ultimately does. How do I foresee this Saturday's game against Maryland going more ground and pound pass or passing? Just curious, since we have some key players hurt. I think they're going to try to run the ball a lot. I think Ryan's not afraid to throw it. Maybe throw it early and then pound it, later. We're a little light. Hopefully, if Chip is back and he's able to, play, you got him and Dallin, and that'll be more than enough to run the ball. And then also Xavier Johnson, throw him in there. They'll be good. Good to go. It's the prediction for the game, who wins. I think Ohio State is a better team. They've got to play better that day. They've got to understand the toughness and understand stopping the run and running the football. Do you have concern about OSU controlling the edge against Corum and JJ McCarthy? Yeah, there is a little bit of that. But here's the best thing. Zach Harrison's been playing great. JT's been playing great. Sawyer's been playing great. Guys have all been doing a good job. You've got linebackers in Steele and Tommy and Cody. They can all run. Your safeties are good tacklers. Controlling the edge is being able to get there, then tackle in space. And I think they're going to be okay with that. That was good. Do I think Knowles and Day haven't shown their full hand and are saving stuff for Michigan? Absolutely. Every coach saves a little bit, holds some back unless they absolutely need to deploy it, but they work on this stuff all the time. So I think they're going to be in a good spot. I think they'll have some stuff being ready to get out there. Is UM just going to run through Ohio State again this year? I don't think so. I don't think that's going to be the case. This defense especially is a lot better and going to be much more adept to stopping the run. You've seen them all year. It's without a doubt a much better defense. Heck, they're top 5, top 10 in a lot of key categories. So I think they're going to be okay. How much will Maryland be about preparing for the Michigan game, not putting stuff on film? They're not going to show anything they don't need to show. And I don't think they'll have to show a whole lot of stuff left with everything there. And then lastly, are you all for the chaos of remaining weeks of the season? Would you rather just see the 4 favorites get in and with more teams thinking they have a shot of getting seeded in the top 4? I want to see the best teams get in. Sometimes that involves chaos. Sometimes that doesn't. You need to win your games. I like having critical games at the end of the season, critical games to get into the conference championship game, critical matchups there to see who gets in the CFP. I like all of that. I don't want anything predetermined. I want to see great football the last 2 and 3 weeks of the season, which I think we're going to get. Well, that's it for this edition of Carps Corner. Please subscribe, like, share it. Fire your comments away. Love to get stuff answered, have communication back and forth. So continue to do that. Really, really appreciate everything. Got the big game preview we'll have obviously on Friday, and then it's Michigan week, and we'll have a lot of great stuff for you there. So thank you for tuning in, and we'll talk soon.